Everyone thought I swapped places with my twin sister just to save her from her abusive husband. They called it a sacrifice. They called it an act of love. But I didn't switch lives just to be her shield. I did it because I wanted to hunt. For 12 years, I had been the one in the cage, but looking at her bruises, I realized her husband was the one who was trapped. He was the perfect prey, and I was finally the predator he never saw coming. My name is Morgan, and my sister's name is Sarah. We are identical twins, mirrors of each other in flesh and bone, yet our souls were forged in different fires. If Sarah was the calm, yielding water of a lake, I was the volatile oil that burned on top of it. Since we were children, people whispered that something was wrong with me. Unstable, the neighbors said. Impulse control disorder, the doctors wrote in their sterile files. They said I struggled to regulate my emotions, but they were wrong. I didn't lack control, I just felt too much. I felt everything at a volume that would deafen a normal person. My joy was an explosion in my chest, and my anger. Well, my anger is the reason I've spent the last 12 years in a 10 by 10 white room. I was 16 when it happened. A local bully, a boy twice my size, had Sarah by the hair, trying to drag her into the shadow of an alleyway. Sarah was sobbing, paralyzed by fear. But me? I felt the blood turn to magma in my brain. The sound of the world muted, replaced by a high-pitched ringing. I don't remember picking up the metal chair from the sidewalk cafe. I don't remember swinging it. I only remember the sickening crunch of a collarbone snapping, his scream that sounded more animal than human, and the terrified eyes of the crowd. They weren't looking at the boy who tried to hurt my sister, they were looking at me. Like I was a demon. My parents couldn't handle the demon living under their roof. They were scared of their own daughter. So, they signed the papers and sent me here, to Blackwood Mental Institute. And just like that, 12 years evaporated. 12 years of staring at the world through reinforced glass and iron bars. 12 years where my only companions were sedatives and the hollow, soulless screams of patients down the hall. But to be honest, I didn't hate Blackwood. It was quiet. It was simple. Nobody poked the bear. I had time to read law books, psychology texts, and I had time to train. For 12 years, I treated my cell like a gym. I did thousands of push-ups until my arms felt like steel cables. I did pull-ups on the window bars until my calluses grew calluses. My body became lean, wired, and hard as granite. The only gift this decade of confinement gave me was a physical strength that most men on the outside would fear. I had only one ache, one lingering worry that kept me up at night. My sister, Sarah, she inherited all of our mother's softness, her inability to hurt a fly. I inherited our father's dormant fury. The day they dragged me away, she cried until she was dry heaving. Morgan, it should have been me, she wept. I'm useless. I slapped her across the face. It was the only time I ever laid a hand on her. If you say that garbage again, I will break out of here and choke you myself. I hissed, grabbing her shoulders. You have to live. You have to be happy. Live for both of us. She promised me she would. But promises are fragile things when you're soft. A year later, she visited with a ring on her finger and a man on her arm. His name was Richard. He was tall, charming to the untrained eye. But I saw the glitch in the matrix. His eyes darted around like a lizard, and when he looked at me, the crazy sister, I felt a wave of superiority and contempt rolling off him. I squeezed Sarah's hand through the gap in the table. I don't like this man. Think about it again, Sarah. Please. Sarah just gave me that sad, resigned smile. With my history? It's a miracle anyone wants to marry me, Morgan. Mom and Dad are getting old, and Richard, he promised to take care of me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shatter the safety glass separating us. But what could I do? I was the certified lunatic. What weight could my warnings possibly hold against a respectable man? The wedding went ahead without me. I sat in my cell, staring at the peeling white paint, imagining my twin sister walking down the aisle toward a future that felt less like a dream and more like a sentencing hearing. For the next few years, Sarah came to see me every month like clockwork. She always brought a peace offering, a box of supermarket donuts or a bag of apples that had seen better days. She would sit on the metal chair, hands clasped, and chirp about her new life. She bragged about getting pregnant, about decorating the nursery, and later, about her daughter, Lily. Her voice tried so hard to sound cheerful, pitching up an octave whenever she mentioned Richard. but the performance was cracking. I am her other half. I didn't need a degree in psychology to know she was lying through her teeth. With every visit, Sarah seemed to evaporate a little more. The vibrant woman I knew was being erased. She grew thinner, her collarbones protruding like wire hangers under her clothes. The dark circles under her eyes deepened into permanent bruises of fatigue, and her smile became a fragile, painfully forced mask. But the biggest red flag was her wardrobe. She started wearing turtlenecks and long-sleeved flannels buttoned to the chin, even when the July heat outside was turning the asphalt into lava. I asked her about it once. "Sarah, it's 90 degrees. Why are you dressed for a blizzard?" "Oh, you know," she stammered, avoiding my eyes. "A married woman has to dress modestly. Richard, he prefers it." A lie. A clumsy, desperate lie. She was hiding something, and the silence between us grew heavy with dread. Then came today. The visiting day that would change everything. I had been waiting since dawn. The sky beyond the iron bars was a flat, oppressive gray, mirroring the storm brewing in my gut. I had a terrible feeling, a vibration in my bones. The rage I'd suppressed for 12 years, burying it under thousands of push-ups and books, was starting to stir. It felt like a hungry beast in a dark cave, waking up, waiting for just one drop of blood to hit the floor. And I knew, with a sickening certainty, that today the blood would fall. I heard the dry click-clack of the heavy lock, and the iron door groaned open. The instant Sarah walked in, I felt like a vice grip crushed my heart. The person standing in front of me wasn't the Sarah I knew. She was an emaciated, trembling shadow. She wore a faded blouse with fraying seams, the collar pulled aggressively high. Despite the suffocating humidity of the hospital, she was bundled up like she was freezing. Her hair was messy, her face sunken and pale, devoid of the glow she used to have. But what chilled my blood were her eyes. Where were my sister's clear, sweet eyes? They were gone, replaced by two deep pits filled with absolute despair. Dead. Lifeless. And beneath her left cheekbone, I saw it a faint, purplish discoloration clumsily concealed with cheap, cakey drugstore foundation. She forced a smile that made my stomach turn. "Morgan. How are you doing?" Her voice was weak, trembling like a dry leaf in the wind. She set a basket of bruised oranges on the table, probably the clearance ones she bought to save a few cents. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I stood up and walked around the bolted-down table, standing firmly in front of her. I raised my hand, and with my callous fingers, I gently touched the hidden mark under her eye. She flinched violently, stepping back like a bird frightened by a hawk. "Ah. It's nothing. I fell off my bike." "You fell off your bike?" I repeated, my voice dropping to absolute zero. "You fell, and you only managed to bruise the soft skin under your eye? Tell me, Sarah, what kind of physics allows for that?" She stammered, lowered her head, and wrung her hands together. I looked down at those hands. Her knuckles were swollen and red, her fingernails bitten short and scratched. Were these the hands of a woman who gardened, or the hands of someone desperately trying to shield her face? The anger began to rise, hot and acidic in my throat. I took a deep breath, trying to keep the beast on its leash. "I'm asking you one more time, sister. Why are you wearing long sleeves in this heat?" "I don't like the sun," she whispered. "I'm just a little weak lately." I couldn't take it anymore. I reached out and grabbed her wrist. She let out a sharp cry and tried to yank away. "Morgan, stop. What are you doing? It hurts." That phrase "it hurts" was like throwing gasoline on a bonfire. Ignoring her pleas, I yanked her sleeve up to her shoulder. And then I saw it. The map of hell. When I saw my twin sister covered in bruises, time seemed to stop. Her thin, pale arms were a canvas of violence. Old yellowish bruises faded into recent dark purple welts. There were red, swollen marks shaped like fingers where she had been squeezed too hard, and long thin welts that looked like lashes from a belt. I released her hand, my entire body trembling. Not from fear, but from a consuming, demented rage I hadn't felt since I was 16. "That bastard," I growled. "Richard." It wasn't a question. It was a verdict. Sarah froze. She realized she couldn't hide it anymore. As if a dam had broken inside her, she collapsed onto the dirty linoleum floor, covering her face. A long-held cry burst out of her, raw, bitter weeping that filled the sterile white room. "Morgan! Morgan! Save me! Help me!" She crawled forward and clung to my legs like a drowning child. He hits me. He hits me constantly. His mother, his sister, that whole family treats me worse than a dog. And he hits Lily, too. He hits Lily. That last sentence turned me to stone. That monster had hit Lily, my 3-year-old niece. I crouched down and lifted Sarah up. She slumped into my arms, completely drained of strength. I looked at her tear-swollen face, at those eyes that were identical to mine but filled with a terror I had never known. "Stop crying," I commanded, my voice deep and raspy. "Crying doesn't solve anything. Tell me. Tell me everything from the beginning to the end. What has that bastard done to you? What has he done to Lily?" I sat my sister down on my single metal bed and poured her a glass of tepid water. She drank between jagged sobs, and then she began to speak. Her desperate confession was a death sentence for that family. Sitting on the edge of the bed with trembling shoulders, Sarah shook the glass of water in her hands. With a broken voice that kept choking in her throat, she began to recount the nightmare. Every word she uttered was like a knife plunging into my heart, twisting deeper with every sentence. "At the beginning of the marriage, he behaved," Sarah whispered, staring at the floor. "At least in front of Mom and Dad. But when I moved in with them, that's when I discovered what hell was like. Her husband, Richard, wasn't just mean. He was a gambling addict. He worked a dead-end job at a warehouse, earning a miserable wage, but every night he blew it all on sports betting and sketchy online casinos. He spent all the money from our wedding in 3 months," she sobbed. "When I tried to talk to him about the bills, he slapped me. That was the first time. He said, 'What would you know, woman? It's my money. I'll do whatever I want.' That slap was the start of a ritual. If he lost money betting, he hit his wife to vent his frustration. If he won, he hit her anyway, claiming it was her fault he hadn't won more because she was bad luck." I clenched my fist so hard my nails dug crescents into my palms, drawing blood. But I didn't feel the pain. Her abusive husband needed a lesson, and I was already drafting the curriculum in my mind. But the worst part, Sarah trembled, looking over her shoulder as if they were watching her, wasn't just Richard. It was his mother. My mother-in-law, Martha. Martha was a terribly wicked and domineering woman. She looked at Sarah not as a daughter-in-law, but as a parasite who had stolen her precious son. She tormented Sarah with a slow, grinding cruelty. If Sarah cooked, Martha complained it was too salty or too bland, dumping the whole pot into the trash and forcing her to start over while the family watched. Even if Sarah cleaned the house until her fingers bled, Martha said it was filthy. And that woman. Sarah's voice cracked. That woman forced me to hand-wash the whole family's underwear. Even my sister-in-law's. I closed my eyes, fighting back nausea. The image of my sweet, timid Sarah crouched over a basin, scrubbing their filth, made my blood boil. And the sister-in-law, I growled. Karen? She was worse. Sarah shook her head. Karen got divorced, moved back in with her son, Braden, and lives rent-free. She treated me like a live-in maid. She left her clothes everywhere and ordered me to wash them. And her son, Braden, is a spoiled brat. He tormented Lily every single day. I opened my eyes abruptly. What did he do to Lily? Sarah started crying again, fresh tears streaming down her bruised cheeks. Lily is only 3 years old, Morgan. Braden is 5. He took her toys, pushed her, and threw her to the floor. He even spit in her plate of food. When I tried to stop him, Karen came running and screamed at me. Who do you think you are to scold my son? Your daughter doesn't even have a father worth mentioning. And then, she encouraged her son to hit Lily. Hit her? Yes. She told him, hit her, son. Spoiled brats need a lesson to learn. Martha just watched and laughed. She said, they're just kids. Your daughter needs to toughen up. She has to yield to her cousin. And Richard? I asked, my voice raw. Your husband? The child's father? Sarah lowered her head, her voice barely a whisper. He looked the other way. He said women needed to give birth to sons. That having a daughter was useless. Talk, I shouted, making her jump. What happened yesterday? Yesterday. Richard came back completely wasted after losing a huge bet. Lily was crying because Braden was pulling her hair. And Richard, he went crazy. He screamed, shut up, you useless brat. And when she got scared and cried louder, Sarah couldn't finish. She put a trembling hand to her cheek. He hit Lily in the face, I whispered. It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded. She had the mark of 5 fingers across her tiny face. When I ran to protect her and plead with him, he turned on me. He dragged me to the bathroom. He slammed my head against the sink. I thought I was going to die, Morgan. I couldn't breathe. The bruises on my arms. They are from Martha and Karen. Instead of stopping him, they joined in. Karen scratched me with a comb, and Martha grabbed dirty socks and shoved them in my mouth to shut me up. That was enough. Everything inside me crumbled: the patience, the logic, the rules of society. I knew I had to swap places with her. Done with normalcy, done with submission. I leaped up from the bed. Sarah looked at me, terrified. Morgan, what are you going to do? I walked over to the single metal mirror bolted to the wall. I looked at myself. My face was pale, but my eyes were burning with a cold, blue fire. I looked at Sarah. We were identical, the same face, the same build. The only difference was that she was dying inside, and I had just been reborn. Sister. I turned around. My voice was frighteningly calm. You didn't come here today for a visit. You came to swap places. Sarah froze, staring at me as if I had grown a second head. Her eyes widened with pure terror, the whites showing all around her irises. Morgan. What are you saying? She whispered. Swap places, I repeated, looking directly into her eyes firmly and without the slightest hesitation. You stay here. I go out. No. No. Sarah shook her head frantically, grabbing my hand with her ice-cold fingers. Morgan, don't you understand? That house is hell. Those people are animals. You've been locked up in here for 12 years. You won't survive out there. You don't know how cruel they are. I smiled coldly, a sharp expression that didn't reach my eyes. You're wrong, sister. Precisely because I've been here for 12 years, I can survive those animals. Look around you. I pointed at the heavy iron bars covering the window. I've lived with animals here, too. The only difference is that the ones in here are medicated and locked up, while the ones out there are running free. I released her hand and grabbed her by her thin shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Listen to me carefully. You are not crazy, which is why you can't beat them. You have morals. You have fear. I am crazy. Only a crazy person like me can handle that trash. Do you think I'm going to escape and run from the police? No. I gave a slight, dangerous smile. I'm walking out the main door with all the honors. I led her to the metal mirror bolted to the wall. Look. We are one. Who is going to tell the difference between Sarah and Morgan? Sarah looked at our reflection in the murky glass, trembling. We were identical down to the last hair, save for the hollowness in her cheeks. This is the plan, I said quickly, glancing at the clock. Visiting time was almost over. Take off your clothes. I'll take off my hospital uniform. Morgan, but. No buts. I cut her off, my voice sharp as a whip. Do you want Lily to live her whole life getting beaten? Do you want to rot in that corner until they kill you? Trust me, I haven't rotted in here for 12 years in vain. I've been waiting for this day. I explained the plan while unbuttoning my scrub top. From now on, you are Morgan. You are safe in this room. Nobody will hit you or bother you here. The doctors and nurses are decent people. They just don't understand me. You just stay calm. If anyone asks you anything, you don't have to answer. Just nod or shake your head. They are used to me being stoic. They'll just write in their files, Morgan is quiet today. You just eat, sleep, and read. See all the books I've read? Read those. Relax. I stopped and looked deep into her eyes, trying to transfer some of my iron will into her fragile spirit. You don't have to do anything. Just wait for me. I will clean up that dumpster fire of a family. I will make them pay for what they did. I will get Lily out of there. I promise you. Sarah's desperate look slowly shifted. The terror receded, replaced by a faint, flickering ray of hope. She was cornered. She had nothing left to lose. Slowly, she nodded her head. Be careful, Morgan. I know. We quickly changed clothes. I pulled on her old, threadbare blouse and the long skirt. As the fabric touched my skin, I gagged internally. The clothes smelled of mildew, stale fear, and a faint, metallic trace of dried blood. The rage boiled inside me again, hotter than before. I slipped Sarah's state ID and the heavy bunch of old house keys into my pocket. In the baggy patient uniform, Sarah suddenly looked very small, like a child playing dress-up. I gave her a fierce hug, feeling her fragile ribs against my chest. Don't move from here. Wait for me. The harsh electronic bell announcing the end of visiting hours rang out, echoing through the halls. I took a deep breath, adjusted my expression to match Sarah's usual defeated posture, and headed for the door. The duty nurse saw me and nodded, barely looking up from her clipboard. Mrs. Rakes, you're leaving now? I nodded, forcing a trembling, weak smile identical to my twin sister's. The heavy iron door of the patient ward slammed shut behind me. Clang. A dry, metallic sound that signaled the end of one imprisonment and the start of another. I walked out the main entrance of Blackwood Mental Institute. The blinding summer sunlight hit my face like a physical blow. 12 years. I was breathing free air after 12 years. It was filled with car exhaust, dust, and the noisy roar of the street traffic. But to me, it was the smell of war. I was a demon freshly freed from her chains. I squeezed the bunch of keys in my pocket until the metal bit into my palm. Richard, Martha, Karen, Brayden, here I come. Karma is coming for you, and it's wearing your victim's face. I grabbed a bus and walked almost another mile. Remembering Sarah's directions from years of letters, their house was deep in a dark, winding alley in the East Side neighborhood. The houses were jammed together, damp, with electrical wires tangled overhead like chaotic cobwebs. The smell of sewage and rotting food hit my nose before I even saw the number. I stopped in front of a dilapidated one-story house. The iron gate was rusty and hanging off one hinge. Sarah lived here. My sister, who had always been so neat and tidy, had been forced to bury her life in a place worse than my prison cell. My hands trembled not with fear, but with adrenaline as I put the key in the lock. The door opened with a high-pitched screech that set my teeth on edge. The first thing I saw was chaos. Clothes were thrown carelessly over a chair. Plates with leftover food sat on the table from lunch, crusty and attracting flies. The floor was sticky, and a sour, nauseating smell of laziness and filth permeated everything. And then I saw her. My niece, Lily. She was sitting in the darkest corner of the house next to the leg of an old, scratched cabinet. She was skin and bones, her skin pale and translucent. She wore an old dress that was 2 sizes too small, with a large tear in one shoulder. She held a doll, a headless, dirty plastic doll. Hearing the noise of the door, she started violently. She looked up, seeing her mother. She didn't run towards me. She shrank back, pressing herself into the wall, and hugged the headless doll tightly with both hands. Her eyes were full of absolute terror. The child was afraid of her own mother. I felt like my heart was breaking into 1,000 jagged pieces. Damn animals. What had they done to a little girl? They had turned a 3-year-old into a frightened creature who feared the sound of footsteps. I tried to soften my expression. I crouched down and forced myself to use a gentle, almost forgotten voice. Lily, Mommy. Mommy is here now. The girl just trembled and stared at me, unblinking. Come to Mommy. I held out my hand. The girl hesitated, looked at me, and then looked behind me as if waiting for someone else. And that someone spoke. That bitch has crawled back already? A sour, malicious voice came from the hallway. Sarah's mother-in-law, Martha, shuffled out. Martha stood there, short and heavy, her skin an unhealthy ashen gray. She was wearing loud, tacky floral pajamas that clashed with the peeling wallpaper, fanning herself with a grease-stained magazine. Where have you been all day? Dragging yourself back now, she sneered, her voice like grinding gears. Did you go see your crazy sister? That lunatic? She spit on the floor, right next to my shoe. Did you bring anything back to this house, or are you just crawling back with that pathetic face to sponge off our food again? I slowly stood up, shielding Lily behind the curve of my back. I didn't say a word. I just stared. I drilled my eyes into hers turbid, evil little eyes buried in folds of flesh. I remembered this face from the wedding photos, but seeing the malice in person was different. The old woman paused. She seemed to notice a glitch in the matrix. The daughter-in-law, who usually lowered her head and trembled like a beaten dog when insulted, was standing tall today. She was daring to look Martha directly in the eye. What? What are you staring at? She raised the rolled-up magazine and pointed it at my face. What bug bit you today? Do you want me to poke your eyes out? I gave a very slight, slow smile. Excuse me, Martha. I didn't hear you clearly. My smile seemed to lower the temperature in the room by 10 degrees. She faltered. Oh, Mom, why bother talking to that useless thing? Tell her to make dinner. I'm starving. Another shrill voice cut through the tension. My sister-in-law, Karen, waddled out of the main room. She was just as heavy as her mother, with a face scarred by bad acne and messy, bleach-fried blonde hair. Behind her, a chubby 5-year-old boy followed with a strut that mimicked his father's arrogance. He was his mother's spitting image. Brayden. The golden child. Seeing Lily, he ran toward her like a heat-seeking missile. Hey! You're playing with a doll? Give it to me. He abruptly snatched the headless doll from her tiny hands. Lily, conditioned by fear, burst into silent tears. Give it back. Please, cousin. It's mine. I won't give it back. Your toys are mine. Brayden raised the doll and hurled it against the wall with a sickening crack. Who plays with this garbage anyway? He turned to Lily and shoved her hard. Why are you crying? Shut up. If you cry again, I'm going to really hit you. Lily fell onto the sticky, dirty floor. She was so terrified that she swallowed her sobs instantly, choking on her own breath. Martha and Karen watched this cruelty and laughed as if they were watching a sitcom. That's my boy, Karen said, lifting her double chin. Men have to be strong like that. Not weak like that little brat. My rage. Yes, there it was, roaring in my chest like a furnace. 10 years of repression evaporated. The monster inside me woke up. The smile disappeared from my face. Brayden, emboldened by his mother's praise, walked over and raised his foot to kick Lily while she was down. I told you to shut up, whack. A hand grabbed his ankle midair. Brayden lost his balance and fell backward, hitting his butt on the floor. But his ankle was still firmly suspended in the air. It was my hand. Suddenly, the house fell into a deathly silence. Brayden's eyes were wide circles of shock. He was used to abusing his cousin, used to his grandmother and mother always taking his side. Never not once had Lily's mother laid a finger on him. Let go of me. Let go, you crazy witch. How dare you touch my leg? He squirmed like a worm on a hook. Without a word, I squeezed. Just a little. Ow. It hurts. It hurts. Mom. Grandma. This ant is breaking my leg. Brayden started shrieking like a siren. Karen finally snapped out of her stupor. My God, Sarah. What are you doing? Let go of my son right now. She ran toward me, her hand raised, ready to scratch my face with her long, red-painted nails. Still holding Brayden's leg with my left hand, I raised my right hand and blocked Karen's arm mid-swing. I grabbed her wrist. Let go, let go. Karen struggled, pulling back with all her weight, but my hand was a steel clamp. Years of pull-ups on iron bars meant she was fighting against hydraulic pressure. Sister-in-law, I said, my voice void of any emotion. You should raise your son better. He is a child, yes, but he cannot be a spoiled brat. If he touches Lily again. I squeezed my hand. Both Brayden and Karen let out a synchronized cry of pain. The next time, I won't settle for just bruising a wrist. Mom! Mom, help me! Karen screamed, terrified, calling for backup. Martha finally snapped. She trembled with rage. Her daughter-in-law, the punching bag she hit and insulted daily, dared to rebel. She dared to touch her daughter and her precious grandson. You are crazy. Martha grabbed a wooden feather duster that was leaning against the wall. You've gotten too big for your britches. Today, I'm going to beat you to death. She swung the duster and started hitting my back nonstop. Thwack. Thwack. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. My back had been hardened by sleeping on metal cots and taking hits in the psych ward rec room. This old woman's strikes felt like a massage. I slowly released Brayden and Karen. Mother and son scrambled backward, clutching their limbs. Martha, seeing that I wasn't reacting to the pain, became even bolder. I'm going to give you such a beating to knock that insolence out of you, so you know your place. I slowly straightened up and turned to face her. The duster continued hitting my shoulders and chest. I raised my hand and grabbed the duster handle mid-swing. Martha, surprised, tried to pull it away, but it didn't move a millimeter. It was rooted in stone. I looked at her. She looked at me. In her eyes, there was anger and confusion. In mine? Only cold emptiness. I pulled hard. Martha stumbled forward, losing her footing. I snapped the duster handle in two over my knee. Crack. I threw the splintered pieces at her feet. Starting today, I said, my voice dropping to a menacing whisper. This house is going to have rules. I looked at the panting old woman, the sister-in-law massaging her wrist with a trembling hand, and the damn nephew who was whimpering in the corner. It's time for dinner. What do we have tonight, mother-in-law? Martha, caught between fear and fury, stammered, the dinner. The rotten tilapia you brought from the market yesterday. Make a stew with it, very salty and dry. So we don't waste the money I feed your family with. There it was. The star dish Sarah had told me about. The punishment meal she was forced to prepare and eat while they dined on fresh food. Yes, mother-in-law. I will. Leaving 3 pairs of stunned eyes behind, I walked into the kitchen. I saw the fish in a plastic basin. It gave off a sweet, rotten smell that made the air thick. With perfect calm, I cleaned it and put it in the pot to stew. I poured half a package of industrial salt into the pot. I turned the heat to high and left it to cook until the liquid completely evaporated and the fish burned into a black, salty charcoal. The smell of burnt salt and rotting fish was unbearable. It smelled like karma. I set the table, a bowl of yesterday's cold, hard rice, a dish of yellowish boiled vegetables, and my masterpiece, the burnt tilapia stew. Mother-in-law. Sister-in-law. Nephew. Dinner is served. Martha, huffing and puffing to regain her dignity, sat down at the table. She wanted to prove she was still in charge. She grabbed a large piece of the blackened fish and shoved it into her mouth. Her face instantly changed color from red to purple. She gagged. Gah. Gah. This is so salty. It's poison. It's going to kill me. She spat the food onto the floor. You want to kill me? With complete calm, I picked up some vegetables. You told me to make it salty and dry. I followed your instructions to the letter. Is it not to your liking? To my liking? My foot. She was so angry that she picked up the hot clay pot with her bare hands. I'm going to smash this pot over your face. Just as she was about to heave it toward me. Bam. I slammed my palm onto the table. The cheap plywood shook violently. The plates jumped. The cutlery rattled. Put it down on the table. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried the weight of a command. Martha's hand froze. She looked at me. She didn't see Sarah. She saw the gaze of a madwoman. You are not going to eat. I lowered my voice, walking around the table. If you don't eat, it's a waste of food. Do you want me to feed you? A daughter-in-law must be respectful to her mother-in-law, after all. I picked up a large metal spoon and scooped up a chunk of burnt, salty fish. Come on, Martha. Open your wide mouth. You. This is crazy. Martha, terrified, pushed her chair back, screeching against the floor. With one hand, I grabbed her chin and squeezed hard, forcing her jaw to unlock. Her mouth opened on its own. I shoved the spoonful of burning salt fish down her throat. Eat it, I snarled. Taste the flavor my twin sister had to put up with for years. Taste what it's like to respect other people's labor. Martha coughed violently, snot and tears mixing on her face. The hard, salty piece of fish got stuck in her throat. She tried to spit it out, but I held her jaw firmly shut. Swallow, I commanded, or choke. The choice is yours. My sister-in-law, Karen, couldn't just sit there watching her mother being treated like a foie gras goose. She forgot her fear, and her years of arrogance resurfaced like a bad rash. Hey, Sarah. Let go of my mother right now. How dare you force-feed her? She ran towards me, her face twisted in a snarl, ready to claw my eyes out with her thick, sharp acrylic nails. She thought that since I was busy holding the old woman's jaw, I wouldn't be ready for a flank attack. She was wrong. My left hand was holding Martha's chin in a vice grip. My right hand was free. Without even turning my head, I swung my right hand back in a wide vicious arc. Splat. It sounded like a gunshot in the small kitchen. It wasn't the light, stinging sound of a social slap. It was the heavy, wet thud of meat hitting a butcher block. Karen froze mid-step. She staggered, her momentum reversed by the sheer force of the blow. Her huge body spun like a top and hit the wall with a thud. Her cheek went from pale doe to deep crimson and instantly began to swell. The mark of my 5 fingers was imprinted on her face like a brand. Her ears were ringing. Her eyes were wide, vacant circles. She touched her cheek with a trembling hand and then looked at my palm with an expression of pure disbelief. She, who had spent her whole life bullying and insulting others, was being hit for the first time, and by her sister-in-law, the woman she considered human trash. It was then that I let go of Martha's chin. She immediately crawled onto the floor, heaving and vomiting up the chunk of burnt fish. I slowly turned to face Karen. "Sister-in-law," my voice was like liquid nitrogen. "Does your cheek hurt?" She trembled with fear and humiliation, pressing her back against the peeling wallpaper. You dare to hit me? I'm your family. I only slapped you," I said, taking a slow step closer to her. "Do you want to feel what a real beating is like? Like the one you and your mother gave Sarah last night while helping Richard?" I recited the details exactly as Sarah had told me. Karen's face drained of color, turning white as a sheet. How do you know?" she whispered. "I know everything," I smiled, but it was the smile of a predator playing with its food. "I also know that you scratched my twin sister with a plastic comb and that your mother shoved dirty socks in her mouth to stifle her screams. Do you want to try it?" I glanced at a pile of Braden's dirty gym socks thrown in the corner. Karen let out a high-pitched scream. She knew I wasn't joking. She saw the monster in my eyes. No. You're a demon. You're not Sarah." She fled, scrambling on the slick floor, and took refuge in her bedroom. The frantic click of the lock echoed. Martha, seeing her daughter flee, hastily crawled on all fours to her own room and slammed the door shut. Braden, seeing his invincible grandmother and mother defeated, peed himself. Without making a sound, he ran behind his mother's locked door. The house fell into an eerie silence. Only Lily and I remained, accompanied by the smell of the salty fish stew that was still steaming on the table. I turned around. Lily was still sitting in her dark corner. She wasn't crying anymore. She just looked at me with wide, saucer-like eyes. In her gaze, the initial terror had lessened, giving way to astonishment and a strange, cautious curiosity. My heart ached for her. I threw away the dirty spoon and went to the fridge. I knew this trash family never ate the same food as Sarah and Lily. Sarah had told me the old woman always hid the good food in the crisper drawer. I opened the fridge. Bingo! Roast chicken, premium ham, Greek yogurt, fresh fruit. I took out a chicken drumstick and a tub of yogurt. I also found a bowl of fresh white rice that Sarah had hidden behind a jar of pickles for her daughter. I heated it up. I put a generous mountain of rice on a clean plate and shredded the chicken over it. I took it to Lily. "Eat, little one." My voice softened, dropping the command tone I used with the animals. "Eat until you're full. From now on, nobody will take your food. Nobody will hit you." I sat down next to her on the floor. Lily looked at me, trembling. Then she looked at the plate. The smell of warm chicken was hypnotic. She was starving. Carefully, she took the spoon, ate a mouthful, and burst into tears. This time, it wasn't fear. She sobbed as she ate, the release of a child who had been hungry for too long. I didn't try to stop her tears. I just sat beside her, gently stroking her matted hair in silence. "Eat, little one. Eat it all. Mommy is here." Lily finished the whole plate and drank the yogurt. When she was done, she looked at me. She hesitated for a moment, then got up and wrapped her thin arms around my neck. A weak, tentative hug. "Mommy," the girl whispered. "Mommy's a little different today." I hugged her back, smelling the dust and innocence in her hair. "Mommy has just decided not to be afraid anymore." That night, I put Lily to bed. But I didn't sleep. I stayed awake in the dark living room, waiting. Richard's shift ended at 11 p.m. He always came home drunk. Exactly at 11:30 p.m., I heard the roar of a motorcycle engine in the alley, followed by the screech of sharp braking. Then, the sound of stumbling steps and a string of foul curses. Damn it! I lost again. I lost everything. Boom! The front door was kicked open. I hadn't locked it. I wanted him to come in. A tall man stumbled into the entryway. He was a head taller than me, broad-shouldered but soft around the middle. He smelled of cheap whiskey, stale tobacco, and sour sweat. His work clothes were stained with grease. His eyes were bloodshot and glazed over. This was the abusive husband. The man who had tormented my sister. The bastard who had slapped his own 3-year-old daughter. Sarah, where are you? He yelled, his tongue thick with alcohol. Where have you hidden, you useless cow? Not seeing anyone immediately, he grabbed a glass from the table, a glass I had washed and left clean, and smashed it against the wall. Crash. Glass fragments flew everywhere. From the bedroom, Lily screamed. I'm scared, Mommy. Daddy's here. I didn't move toward the bedroom. I stood my ground, 10 feet away from him, a statue in the shadows. Richard saw me. He smiled maliciously, his teeth yellow in the dim light. Ah, there you are. Where's the water? I'm thirsty. Get me some water, quick. I remained still. Richard frowned. His wife usually ran to serve him like a waitress. Why was she standing there like a ghost? Are you deaf? He shouted, looking around for something else to break. You're acting up today. I'm going to have to teach you a lesson again. He stumbled toward me, swaying. I lost money today and I'm in a bad mood, so you better obey. He raised his hand. It was a familiar motion, the same backhand slap he had used to discipline Sarah for 7 years. The same hand that had left the mark on Lily's face. I'm going to give you a beating so that. His thick, hairy arm swung toward my face with the weight of a sledgehammer. It stopped in midair. I had grabbed his wrist. Richard froze. His eyes widened, trying to focus. He tried to pull free, but he couldn't. His wrist was trapped as if in a steel vise. He looked at me, then at my hand gripping his arm. What are you doing? Let go of me. He started to realize something was wrong. He was drunk, but his survival instinct was flickering on. How could the weak Sarah have such grip strength? Let go of me, he yelled, and with his other hand, he threw a clumsy, drunk punch at my face. It was slow, telegraphed. I simply tilted my head to the left. His fist grazed my ear, hitting nothing but air. Richard stumbled forward, off balance. Honey. My voice was eerily sweet. Tired from work? You bitch. He sensed danger and tried to yank his arm back, but I planted my feet and squeezed harder. Crack. A dry, short sound. The sound of a wrist bone dislocating and fracturing. Richard let out a scream of pain that instantly sobered him up. My hand. What did you do to my hand? He collapsed to his knees, but I didn't release him. I lifted him up by the broken wrist. Hitting has become a habit, hasn't it? You are not Sarah. Who are you? He hissed through gritted teeth. I'm your wife, I smiled. The same one you love to smash against the sink. I raised my free hand. Splat. I slapped him across the face. This wasn't my sister's weak defense. It was a slap charged with 12 years of prison workouts and unadulterated rage. The big man staggered and hit his head against the wall. He fell to the floor face down. His cheek was instantly swollen, blood trickling from a split lip. He was dazed. A woman had hit him, his victim had hit him. Mom. Karen. Help me. He shouted, terrified. Save me. Sarah has gone crazy. She's killing me. In the 2 bedrooms, not a sound was heard. Martha and Karen heard him, but neither dared to open the door. They trembled behind their locks, the cowardly rats they were. Richard realized no one was coming. The pain, the humiliation, and the alcohol turned into a blind fury. The fury of a man whose fragile ego had been trampled. You dare to hit me? I'm going to kill you. He staggered to his feet like a wounded bear. He lunged at me, opening his arms to crush me with his body weight. I sighed. Too slow. I didn't back away. I stepped into his guard. As he lunged, I ducked under his arms. I grabbed a handful of his greasy hair with my left hand and yanked his head down. With my right hand, I closed my fist and delivered a powerful uppercut to his solar plexus. Boom. A dull thud sounded, sickeningly wet. Richard folded over at the waist. His eyes rolled back in his head. Saliva and stomach acid spewed from his mouth. He couldn't even scream anymore. He just gasped like a fish out of water, his diaphragm paralyzed. I was still holding his hair, keeping him on his feet. This, I whispered into his ear, is for Lily. I lifted his head by the hair, exposing his face. And this. I slapped him again, harder. Splat. Is for my sister Sarah. I dragged him. He was corpulent, dead weight. But to me, he felt like a broken sack of potatoes. I hauled him across the linoleum floor, his boots scraping a pathetic rhythm against the tiles. I dragged him straight to the bathroom, the narrow, dirty bathroom where he had tormented my sister for years. You like slamming your wife into the water, huh? You think that's fun? I plugged the drain and twisted the tap. The pipes groaned, and brown, rusty water sputtered out before running clear. I let the sink fill halfway. I grabbed his greasy hair, bunching it in my fist like a handle. Refreshing, honey. I shoved his head underwater. Richard writhed like a pig in a slaughterhouse. His legs kicked uselessly against the cabinets. Thud. Thud. The dirty sink water bubbled violently as he screamed into the liquid void. I held him there. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. I yanked his head up. He gasped, sucking in air with a desperate, wet wheeze. His face was dripping, his eyes wild with panic. Is the water cold? I whispered, leaning close to his ear. You loved dunking Sarah's head, didn't you? You heard her pleas. You saw her despair. Splash. I shoved him back under. Gurgle. Help, help. He could barely articulate a bubble before the water filled his mouth again. I held him down longer this time. I watched the bubbles slow down. I yanked him up again. His face was ghostly pale. His eyes rolled back in his head. Snot, saliva, and tap water were dripping off his chin in long, ropey strands. He was trembling so violently, his teeth chattered. The drunkenness was gone, evaporated by the shock of near drowning, leaving only absolute, primal terror. He looked at me as if he were seeing a ghost. The monster who, a moment ago, was threatening to kill me, was now cowering. And then I smelled it, acrid. Ammonia. He had peed himself. The smell of urine mixed with the damp mildew of the bathroom was unbearable. I frowned, wrinkling my nose. Gross. I released his hair. Richard slumped to the bathroom floor, coughing and vomiting. He vomited the cheap alcohol, the greasy warehouse lunch, even the bile from his empty stomach. I looked down at him with cold disgust. I looked at him, then at my hands. For 12 years, I used these hands to turn pages of books and grip pull-up bars. Now, I was using them to clean up trash. I left the man whimpering like a dying dog and walked out of the bathroom. I heard the door to Martha and Karen's room open slightly, just a crack. Then, seeing me, it slammed shut. Click. They had seen everything. Good. The more they saw, the more the fear would fester in their brains like an infection. I walked into the kitchen, laundry area. In a dirty corner, I found a plastic hamper full of sour-smelling dirty laundry. Sarah hadn't washed their clothes since yesterday because she was at the hospital visiting me. On top of the pile, gray and stained, were Martha's old, oversized cotton underwear. An idea came to mind. A dark, twisted, but very satisfying idea. Sarah had told me that Martha was the ringleader, the brains behind the abuse. Richard was just the muscle. To stop a dog from biting, you have to break its teeth. But for a dog to stop being loyal to its master, you have to make it fear and despise the master. I turned the stove back on. I filled a large stockpot with water. Using a pair of tongs I found in the drawer, I grabbed the dirty underwear and dropped them into the pot. I set the burner to high. Within minutes, it was boiling fiercely. A horrible smell began to rise, worse than the sewer, worse than the burnt fish. It was the smell of unwashed bodies and decay. Meanwhile, Richard had crawled out of the bathroom. He dragged himself across the floor, leaving a trail of water and slime, clawing his way toward his mother's door. Mom! Mom, help me! He croaked. That one is crazy. Mom! The door remained closed, locked tight. Inside I heard Martha's trembling voice through the wood. Go away. Go away. Don't come near me. If you're crazy, die alone. Don't bring her here. Richard froze. His mother, the woman who had always protected him, the woman who had encouraged him to hit his wife, was now abandoning him to save her own skin. He turned his head slowly to look at me. He saw me stirring the pot. He saw the steam rising. He didn't understand what I was doing. I ladled a bowl of the broth. It was thick, yellowish, and repulsive. I walked over and placed the steaming bowl on the floor in front of Richard. Drink. He looked at it blankly, his eyes losing focus. What? What is this? Medicine, I said softly. A medicine to cure abusive husbands. A medicine to cure ungrateful sons. A medicine to cure the illness of hitting your wife because your mommy tells you to. I pointed to the bowl. Drink, honey. It's Martha's special brew. He looked at the bowl and sniffed it. His face went from pale to green. He recognized the smell. He understood. No, no. You're a demon, he whispered, crawling backward, scraping his heels on the floor. A demon? I laughed, a sharp, barking sound. Compared to dunking a woman's head in water, slapping a 3-year-old child, and forcing someone to eat garbage, this is very humane. This is just karma. I stepped forward, grabbed his hair, and yanked his head back, exposing his throat. I told you, I snarled, my face inches from his. This house has to have rules. First rule, you reap what you sow. Your mother sowed the seed of hate, so you, her son, have to eat the fruit. Drink. I forced his mouth open and poured the awful broth down his throat. He squirmed, gagging, trying to vomit, but I held his jaw firmly shut, massaging his throat to trigger the swallow reflex. He had to swallow, sip by sip. Suddenly, the door to Martha's room flew open. She stood there, unable to hide anymore. She saw the pot on the stove. She saw her own underwear boiling in the water. She saw her son drinking the filth. Her eyes rolled back in her head. My God. My God. You. Richard vomited violently, this time heaving up bile. Martha looked at her son, then at me. There was no more malice in her eyes, only pure, unadulterated terror. She stumbled, clutched her chest, and fainted. She hit the floor with a heavy thud. Perfect. One down. I looked at Richard, who was convulsing on the floor. See? Your mother fainted from the excitement. Now, get lost in your room. I leaned down, my voice dropping to a whisper. If I hear a single moan from you tonight, I'll make you drink the water from that whole basin of dirty laundry. Richard, with his last strength born of terror, scrambled to his feet and crawled into his bedroom, locking the door behind him. The house was finally silent. The next morning, the house was silent as a tomb. I got up early, stepping over the threshold of a new reality. I bathed Lily, scrubbing the grime of neglect from her skin. I raided Martha's secret fridge again, preparing a hearty breakfast, sautéed beef, fluffy scrambled eggs, and fresh toast. Lily ate eagerly, the light starting to return to her eyes. From the 2 locked bedrooms, no sound came out. Martha, Karen, and Richard, the 3 monsters of yesterday, stayed hidden like rats in a sewer. I didn't care. I fed Lily and put on cartoons for her. Around 9 a.m., there was a loud, decisive knock at the door. Bang. 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 Who is it? I asked. Police. Open the door. I smiled so fast it almost hurt. I opened the door. 2 police officers stood there, one older with graying temples, one younger and eager. The young officer looked at me. I was wearing a sleeveless top, exposing Sarah's old bruises in the morning light. Are you Richard Rakes's wife, Sarah? Yes, I am, I whispered. We received a complaint from your husband. He accuses you of brutally assaulting him. Just then, Richard crawled out of his room. He looked pathetic. His face was swollen, one cheek purple, his wrist heavily bandaged with a makeshift splint. He walked with a limp, feigning agony. Here, officers. Look. He pointed to his battered face. She hit me. She went crazy. She's the sister of that lunatic in the asylum. The madness rubbed off on her. Arrest her. Martha and Karen poked their heads out, nodding vigorously. It's true, officer. She hit her husband, her mother-in-law, and her sister-in-law. Karen pointed to the handprint on her cheek. The older officer frowned. He looked at the bulky, grease-stained man, and then at me, small, thin, but standing firm. Mrs. Rakes? He asked seriously. Is this true? Did you assault them? I didn't deny it. Yes, officer, I said, my voice quiet and trembling. I assaulted them. Richard's eyes lit up. See? She confessed. Lock her up. But, I continued, raising my head. I did it in self-defense. My husband, my mother-in-law, and my sister-in-law. They were hitting me. Lie. Richard shouted. When did I ever hit you? I walked into the bedroom and came back with a thick manila folder. It was Sarah's insurance policy. The one thing she had gathered in her desperation. I slammed it on the table. This is a police report from 3 months ago, broken ribs. This is a medical report from 2 months ago, broken nose. My husband told the ER doctors I fell down the stairs. I pulled out photo after photo. These are bruises on my arms, back, and legs. Belt marks. Scratches. I rolled up my sleeve, shoving the fresh purple marks under the officer's nose. This injury is from the day before yesterday. My abusive husband hit my daughter in the face. When I tried to stop him, he dragged me to the bathroom and choked me. His mother and sister held me down. The 2 officers were stunned. They looked at the photos, then at the 3 demons cowering in the hallway. I put up with it for 7 years, I said, tears leaking from my eyes. Yesterday he came home drunk and tried to kill me. I couldn't take it anymore. I reacted. I looked the older officer in the eye. I hit my husband once. He has hit me thousands of times. If a husband can beat his wife for a decade and walk free, isn't it also a domestic matter when the wife finally fights back? The older officer sighed. He turned to Richard. Mr. Rakes. Look at you. You're twice her size. With this stack of reports, if I open a case today, you are the one going to jail for felony assault. Richard's face turned ashen. I'm warning this family. The officer pointed a gloved finger at them. Don't make us come back here. Mrs. Rakes. If he touches you again, call us immediately. When they left, Richard, Martha, and Karen stood there, vibrating with impotent rage. They realized the law couldn't save them. They couldn't use force. So, they plotted. Throughout the day, I heard whispers from Martha's room. I knew exactly what they were planning. They would use the crazy label. That's not Sarah, I heard Martha hiss. It's Morgan. She escaped. She's impersonating her sister. We have to send her back, Richard whispered. But we can't call the hospital, or she'll tell them everything. We have to weaken her first. Sleeping pills, Karen suggested. In the soup. That night, dinner was a farce. Martha had cooked a roast chicken and prepared a special bowl of soup. Sarah, come eat, Martha smiled, a rictus of fake warmth. I prepared this soup especially for Lily. She looks so thin. She placed the steaming bowl in front of Lily. You give it to the child, she said. I looked at the soup. I looked at Martha. Her eyes were staring intently, waiting for the drug to take effect. Thank you, mother-in-law. I picked up the bowl. Ouch, it's hot. I blew on it. And then, crash, I dropped the bowl. The soup splattered all over the floor. Oh no, I exclaimed. How clumsy of me. I spilled the special soup. Martha's face crumpled. Her plan was ruined. The dinner ended in silence. They had lost patience. Since poison failed, they decided to use brute force. That night, I put Lily in the living room with the TV on loud. I went to the bedroom and lay down, pretending to sleep. I breathed evenly. Midnight. Creak. The door opened. 3 shadows entered. Richard, with a thick rope, Karen with duct tape, Martha with a towel. She's asleep, Richard whispered. Tie her up. They lunged. Too slow. I sat up and kicked Karen in the stomach. Oof. She flew backward, hitting the wall. I grabbed the ceramic lamp and smashed it over Richard's bandaged head. Smash. Blood gushed. He screamed. I grabbed Martha in a chokehold. One more step and I break her neck. Everyone froze. Go to the living room. I screamed. Now. I herded them out. I forced Richard back into the bedroom. You like tying people up. I threw him onto the bed. Let's see how you like it. Dazed from the head wound, Richard couldn't fight. I tied his hands and feet to the bedposts with the rope he brought. I stuffed a rag in his mouth. I turned off the lights in the bedroom, leaving him moaning in the dark. I went back to the living room where Martha and Karen were trembling. Oh my God, I gasped, putting on a terrified face. Richard. He's gone crazy. He tied himself up. He's trying to trick us. He said he's going to kill us all when he gets loose. What? Karen asked, confused. He's tied to the bed. Helpless? Martha asked. A wicked glint appeared in her eye. She hated me, but she also hated her useless son who lost all their money. And she loved violence. He's tied up but he's thrashing, I lied. Help me hold him down. No, Martha grabbed a broomstick. We'll teach him a lesson for scaring his mother. Yes, Karen grabbed a metal mop handle. Let's beat some sense into him. They thought I was the one tied up. Or maybe they just wanted to hit something. It's dark in there, I whispered. Don't turn on the light, or he'll attack. The two women ran into the dark room. They saw a figure struggling on the bed. They assumed it was me. Die, you crazy witch, Karen screamed, swinging the mop handle. Whack! Whack! Take this. And this. Martha swung the broom. Thud. Crack. Richard's muffled screams filled the air. Mmph. Mmph. I stood at the door, phone in hand, recording everything. The flash of my camera illuminated the scene. A mother and sister beating their son and brother to a pulp. After 5 minutes, I flipped the light switch. Surprise. Martha and Karen froze. They looked down. They saw Richard, bloody, tied up and weeping. You. Martha dropped the broom. You tricked us. I have it all on video. I waved the phone. Felony assault. Conspiracy. Attempted murder. I dialed 911. Hello? I need police and an ambulance. My husband is being beaten by his mother and sister. I think they broke his ribs. When the police arrived, the same officers as before, they watched the video in silence. The older officer looked at Martha with pure disgust. Mrs. Rakes, you are under arrest. They handcuffed Martha and Karen. Richard was loaded onto a stretcher, weeping not from pain, but from the realization that his life was over. The house was finally empty of monsters. The next morning, only Braden remained. He woke up to find his family gone. Where's my mom? He demanded, trying to snatch Lily's toast. I grabbed his hand. Your mom is in jail. Your grandma is in jail. Because they hurt people. Braden paled. Jail? Yes. Do you want to go to jail too? No. Then apologize to Lily. I'm sorry, Lily. Call her Queen Lily. Queen Lily. It took a week, but the house became quiet. Braden learned respect through fear, then through routine. Richard came back from the hospital broken, physically and mentally. Martha and Karen returned from jail a week later, charges dropped by Richard, but their spirits were crushed. That night, the family gathered in the living room. Bruised, battered, defeated. Martha knelt on the floor. Please, she rasped. Leave. We can't take it anymore. You are the devil. Divorce, Richard wept. I'll sign anything. Good, I said. But it's going to cost you. We have no money. Karen shrieked. Liar, I said. Dad's insurance money. $900,000. Hidden in the kitchen shed, buried under the firewood. Martha turned white. Richard looked at his mother. You had $900,000? While I was drowning in debt. The family turned on each other, screaming, clawing. I let them fight. Stop, I yelled. Give me $620,000. Child support. Alimony. Compensation for torture. Cash. Tomorrow. 3 days later, I walked out of that hellhole with a suitcase full of cash and a signed divorce decree. I hailed a taxi to Blackwood Mental Institute. I walked into the common room. Sarah was there, surrounded by nurses, holding a cake. Congratulations, Morgan. The director shook my hand. Your sister Sarah. You. Have made a miraculous recovery. The psychological evaluation was perfect. Sarah winked at me. She had passed the tests. She wasn't crazy. She had just been afraid. My protection had cured her. Let's go home, sister, Sarah said, picking up Lily. We walked out into the sun. The air smelled of freedom. We checked into a hotel, ordered room service, and cried until we laughed. Revenge is sweet, I said, looking at the money. But karma? Karma is beautiful. We bought a new apartment. Sarah started sewing. Lily started laughing. And me? I sat on the balcony, reading a law book, watching the sunset. The monster inside me was finally asleep. Not because it was gone, but because my family was safe. And if anyone ever tries to hurt them again, well, I'm only a swap away. You know, for years, people called me crazy. They locked me away because they said I felt too much, that my anger didn't belong in a civilized world. But looking back at the wreckage of that house and the smile on my sister's face, I realized something. Sometimes, feeling too much is the only thing that keeps you human. If I hadn't felt every ounce of Sarah's pain, If I hadn't let that rage burn a hole in my chest, I never would have had the courage to swap lives. I didn't just fight for Sarah or for little Lily. I fought for every woman who has ever been silenced, every soul who has been told to keep the peace while they are breaking inside. Strength isn't about how hard you can hit though. Trust me, a good right hook helps. Strength is about refusing to let fear drive the car. Sometimes, you have to become the storm so the people you love can finally see the sun. And you know what? I'm not ashamed of what I did. I'm not ashamed of the fear I put in their eyes. Because for the first time in 7 years, Lily is sleeping without nightmares. For the first time, Sarah is singing in the shower. Maybe justice doesn't always come from a judge with a gavel. Sometimes, it comes wearing your face. The face of someone who finally said, no more. If you believe that justice was served today, show it by hitting that like button. I want to see how many of us are willing to stand up for the ones we love. I'm curious, where are you listening from right now? Are you safe? Are you free? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. If this story resonated with you and you want to support our journey, consider subscribing to the channel. We have so many more stories to tell, secrets to uncover, and justices to serve. Thank you for sharing your time with me today. It means the world. On your screen right now, you'll see 2 more stories about people taking their power back. Click one of them, and let's keep this fire burning together. See you in the next one.